Right, it's bang on 2 o'clock. Kia ora koutou. My name is Susie Robertson. I'm the Community Manager at Sustainability Trust. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar today. This is the fourth and last in our series, Sustainable Backyards, which have all been about gardening, and they're brought to you in conjunction with KaiCycle and Grow Space. Today's webinar is all about growing in your community. If you did miss the first three about how to set up a garden, what to grow at this time of the year, and composting from home, they're all available at Sustainability Trust's website and on our Facebook page, so you can go and catch up on that. And if you're not much for watching videos, there is also a blog with some really helpful links, so go and check them out. But yeah, what I'm going to do today is start with a bit of a little relevant karakia, and then I will introduce you to our amazing panelists who will be doing most of the talking today. Okay, so, kia kora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou e te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I tātou katoa, hui e, taiki e.
Taiki e.
That means may peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for all of us this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. All about community today. Right, so I guess today is going to differ slightly from our other formats. We definitely still want to hear from you, and in order to be able to do that, you're all on mute, but you can go to the Q&A button, which will be somewhere on your screen, might be the bottom, might be the top, might be on the side, and you can write some questions in there and I'll fire them at our panelists. But we are going to ask them some sort of poignant questions to begin with to get us started today. And this is being recorded and will be available at the Sustainability Trust website and on Facebook, probably later today, if not by Monday morning. I think that's it from me. So without further ado, I will hand you over to our panelists, and I'm going to start with Grant.
Kia ora koutou. My name's Grant Corbishley. Really happy to be here today. This is a great topic to talk about. I've been involved in this for a while and it's a very fulfilling journey to be on. So in 2010, I engaged in a PhD project along with my neighbours that focused on building community and in particular systems of care. So 10 years later, those systems are still working well and are managed by kaitiaki or stewards who live in all parts of my community. So today, in line with the aims that this session is going to be about, I thought I would talk about three approaches we used to ignite connectedness, and then maybe, if we've got time, talk about the one that I think is the most important. Cool.
Fantastic. All right, we'll hand over to Sheldon next.
Kia ora tātou, everyone. I'm Sheldon. I'm one of the farm managers and one of the team at KaiCycle, which is a community urban farm in Newtown and a community compost hub. And I've been involved there for 5 years now. I think the relevance of that project to today's discussion about looking at how we grow food as a mechanism for building community is 5 years ago where we are was a park that was fairly used, and now it's quite a hub for bringing quite a diverse range of the community together every week, whether that's through their composting or their coming to get produce or coming to help out or just sitting and being still in that space. So looking forward to sharing some of that and some of the projects that we've started in response to COVID-19, one of which is called the Mutual Aid Project.
Awesome. Thanks, Sheldon. I might get you to put yourself in mute and head inside. There was quite a bit of wind disturbance in that little section just while Saskia is introducing herself. So over to you, Saskia.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Saskia ho. I'm Saskia. I work for a few community centres out in the peninsula, so Marama and Mopuia and Strathmore Park. Main work is just around community development and support. And also I run Crop Swap Newtown. So that's a community event where we come together monthly, bring together excess produce or just anything with kind of around the homemade and homegrown realm, and just about sharing abundance and redistributing it. Yeah, so I'm keen to talk about how that works and how to get people more involved in the community. Sorry, I just got a call. Yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora, Saskia. Okay, so our first question today is, why is community important? And maybe I will head back to you, Saskia, to start us off with this one.
There's too many reasons, basically. You could start with evolutionary. I mean, we evolved to live in community. That's how we survive. Mental health, physical health, social health. Those ones are more obvious, but I think one that maybe we forget about is that sense of belonging. We need to feel like we belong in the space that we're in. I don't think it's enough just to have a group of friends that are spread out across the city that you go and visit now and then. I think we really need a sense of place. In that, I mean, you are connected with your neighbours and you're not just connecting with people the same as yourself, for example, the same age or the same socioeconomic position. Yeah, I think it's super important in your actual physical community to know each other, to connect, to share. I guess that's maybe the spiritual aspect of it that just goes beyond surface well-being, I think. Yeah.
Great. Amazing answer. All right, Sheldon, how about you? Why is community important?
Yeah, I think Saskia covered the kind of the broad answer. But adding on to it, I guess the realization that in us as individuals, we aren't as strong as we think we are to kind of achieve everything that we wish we could, and that we always do need someone else or other people around us, whether that's just to be happy or to enjoy a moment, or in hardship when we need physical or material support. And I think it's realizing that community isn't necessarily your street, or it's not necessarily your family. There's different communities around you. It's knowing where those all are and what they can provide for you, and then figuring out what is lacking. And I think diversity, like all parts of ecology, it's diverse. So making sure that we are welcoming that in the things that we're doing to ensure that we are kind of helping that diversity to stay around and not be lost.
Fantastic. All right, and finally, Grant, why is community important?
I think given what we're facing, maybe there's no alternative. So that's how important I think it is. Yeah, I think even though disasters are very difficult experiences for many, they often have a silver lining in that they make us think about ways to connect and form community as a way of coping with the hard times. And now people are doing a lot of work in preparing for those times that may come. And history has shown that community does get people through hard times in a better way. So just really quick examples are the Australian bushfires and the communities that have sprung up as a result of that. The Christchurch earthquake, the Awanui community and their response to the earthquake. And so I think that's the only way to go, really.
Awesome. Yeah, I think now that obviously right now community has become crucial again, because we are in our little bubbles and we need the community around us to support each other. Awesome. So next one is just, talking about the projects that you've been involved in and kind of growing as a community. I'm going to start with you, Grant. Go back the other way.
Okay. I just thought I'd focus on three kind of approaches and talk about examples that maybe people can use now and examples that we've used. And two of these examples we will all know really well once I mention them, because there's been many manifestations of those in the last weeks. So I've given these three examples names. And the first one I call moss to a flame approach. And so an example of that I saw a few days ago was a guy cycling down my street with loud music playing and wearing a pink tutu. And so that's kind of like what I mean by moss to the flame, where people go, oh, what's that? What's happening? What's happening? So you kind of draw people to an event or something. We did that by creating a community garden. And I'm not going to talk about how the how and whys of community garden, but basically the caretaker of our school wanted to create a community garden in order to create a focus point for people to come, a reason to come, be together, to talk together, to get to know each other, because he felt that in order to prepare for any kind of impending disaster, the best way to prepare is for us to know each other as a community. So our community garden started in 2010, and 10 years later, it's still going really well. And we developed afternoon teas. So we let it be known to the community that at 3 p.m. every Sunday, there was afternoon tea in the community garden. And of course, it started with a few, but at its peak, there was 12, 15 people coming in, fitting into a very small space, shoulder to shoulder, and chatting to each other. So I think that was a very successful example of that approach, and it has had huge spin-offs for our community. The second approach I call gesture, and you'll know this one as well because this has been happening in the last few weeks. It's where if you do some baking, or if you have a garden and you take some baking, put it in a bag or some carrots and put it in your neighbour's letterbox with a note. And that's what I call a gesture. So that note might have your name and your contacts. And as we know, a lot of people don't know their neighbours. So 10 years ago, I didn't know my neighbours. Now I know pretty much all of them. And so that gesture of putting something in someone's letterbox usually is returned with the gesture. And if those gestures are valued and acknowledged, then they begin to accumulate. And what comes from that is the thing I think is the most important, which perhaps I could talk about later, is what we call a goodwill bank. Is like every time you make a gesture that's validated, you are adding goodwill to the community. It's like a bank, and that goodwill will grow and accumulate. And so when something hard or difficult hits the community, you can rely on that goodwill to kind of get you through it. The third one is an approach I call slow burner. It seems slow, but it's actually no slower than any technique that we've used, which is a listening technique. So the first couple of years of my PhD, I started with knocking on my neighbour's door and simply listening. And then, and that started by the neighbour saying, I haven't got much to talk about, but an hour later, he was still going for it. And they kind of had the same sequence, these listening encounters where they would talk a bit about their life in the community, and then they would start to sort of get a little bit maybe upset or frustrated at the things they think are wrong with their community. And then once they got that off their chest, they'd quite often generate an idea. And sometimes it might be with something that's like, I've got this idea, but nobody wants to hear it. The council doesn't want to know, things like that. So I would say, what's the idea? And when they told me, I'd say, okay, let's do it. Let's build it. So as a result of that, we built about 35 projects in the community, and the community garden was one of them. Also, that has another effect, is that when you, and I'm sure everyone knows this, that when you listen to somebody, they feel valued and acknowledged. And so they then begin to perceive their own neighbourhood in a different way. And that has real benefits. So those are the three kind of approaches I'll talk about. I'll leave the rest to Saskia and Sheldon.
Fantastic stuff there, Grant. Thanks. I'm going to
Cool.
hand over to Sheldon.
That was really interesting, Grant. I think, having some language around the different ways and the different timescales of the way that these projects actually catalyze community building is a really good way of, so I'm very thankful for that. I guess the main project I've been working on is KaiCycle, and in reflecting on it in the last few days, it was never started explicitly as a community building project. It was really looking at how do we grow food in the city ecologically, but the simple act of putting plants in the ground in this place brought people there, and the community around that space kind of self-formed, which was a really interesting thing to realize, that kind of you put something down, and the people that want to that come to that, and so in a way it's become a very diverse community that's around that, from migrant communities, refugee communities, to kids, the 4-year-olds next door at the kindy that call out to us every day, to people that really want to garden. And so that's really interesting, that you don't necessarily have to frame things as a community building project, but if there is benefit to people and people see a commonality with themselves in it, then there will be unity around it. And I kind of see the word community as it's unity through common thought, that there's something that binds you all together in that space. And so that's kind of where a lot of my learning in communities come from, is that project. And the one that we've now launched into for responding to COVID is something called Gardens for Communities. So rather than responding to this crisis by building tons of community gardens, which would be a huge amount of work for a small number of people, it's to say, start a garden at your house, and you may find that the community comes around that simply by opening your gate. And we're doing it with what's called a mutual aid network. And so mutual aid is really just the idea that if you've got surplus of material or energy or time and someone doesn't, then you can just share that. It's just this free sharing of resource. And so to kick it off, we are offering seedlings and compost and advice, and that's kind of where these webinars came out of as well. So if you are interested in getting mutual aid, you can go to our website, but if you're also interested in feeding into that network, then you can just flick us an email and we can try and build this sharing of resources around it. And then I guess maybe we'll cover this a little bit later, but it's kind of the whole point of it is leading into the idea that one way of building your community around you is to share parts of that garden, or share something that comes out of it with the people around you. And as Grant said, their garden there has been open 10 years. It's still bringing community together. So something about plants is a really easy way to bring people together.
Awesome. I like that. It's kind of like sometimes you purposely try and build community, and other times you do something and then community forms around it. So, all right.
And I guess,
sorry.
Also, sorry, I'll just say quickly, and sometimes you do something and you know that the people will come.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Saskia, what project tell us a little bit about your projects?
So I briefly mentioned crop swap before, but to expand on it, it started, I think it's our second birthday in a few weeks, which will be a very quiet birthday, but Yeah, we started, Crop Swap exists all around the world, and it's super simple. It's the same thing. Like, I really connect with the kōrero from Sheldon and Grant in so many ways. Like, it's that, I think it was the moth concept of it's bringing excess food or whatever is just an excuse to get people together. I mean, that was my thinking, and I think it's ended up being a lot of people's thinking, that they don't come to get produce or get seeds or anything like that. People just come to connect. Yeah, on how it runs, it's just, there's all sorts of things that come in, and we really try to push the fact that you don't need to bring anything along. Like, that's not the point. And anything that you bring is welcome. And I think bringing along your excess, your abundance, does give people a sense of empowerment as well. So that is an important part of it. Yeah, and it's been awesome to see the people that we've connected with. My best friends I've met through Crop Swap. Probably met Sheldon through Crop Swap, I don't know. Yeah, so that's been super exciting. Other than that, through my work, I just have worked on the community garden there, and through that was involved in Seeds to Feeds, which I'll just quickly explain it. So it occurred a few weeks ago and changed a lot because of COVID, but basically we were growing food for around 6 months to pull it together for a community meal. Both Sheldon and Grant were involved in it, so in different communities, just ultra local food, built and grown by the community for the community. Yeah, and I guess expanding on, I really liked, Grant, your theories there, and I think the slow, and in terms of that slow burner thing, I like to think of it as planting seeds. Like, I'm terrible at thinking of all these cool ideas that you could do, which, you know, makes me really busy and stressed sometimes. But I like to think that by doing lots of little things, like suggesting, oh, we could do a community garden, or doing gestures like, I've put some flowers on my street and offered them out to people, or even things like just knocking on someone's door and asking to use some sugar, expressing vulnerability. It's just adding more of a human element. Like, I'm your neighbour, I'm a human, I need things, I have things, let's share it. So I think the more you kind of do little things like that, yeah, the more things will grow. So when you're planting all those seeds, then eventually you'll get the fruits. But it is slow, and yeah, be patient. Yeah.
Fantastic, thanks Saskia. I'm gonna actually jump in with a question now. So this is from Sarah. If I wanted to start up a community garden, how would I do it? I don't even know where to begin. Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, that's tricky. I'll start.
Great.
Yeah, I've talked to Sheldon a little bit about this. So we started our community garden under the radar, and I kind of recommend it. So we found a patch of ground and found that it belonged to Housing New Zealand. I think that's what they're called. And we asked them, and they said, why not? It's full of blackberry, go for it. And we've had that piece of ground for 10 years. So we haven't had to go through a huge process to attain the piece of ground we wanted. I know Sheldon has. So if you can start a community garden under the radar, and there's lots of spare land that's kind of nothing space that you can turn into that. And I know people have turned curbsides into gardens, and other spaces that are kind of like really not doing anything and of no interest to the council. And the other thing is, you can start something, just do it. And we've done this with native plants. We've just planted plants without asking. And when the council found out, they went, Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's me.
I think start with trying to identify a space around you and see if that space catalyzes with other people, because if it's just you starting the garden, it's just your garden. But if you've got a team behind you, then it's definitely a community garden. And I think if you're going to go under the radar, do it with intention. And like if you're going to go and plant natives, think about what you're planting.
Yeah, true.
Don't just do it willy-nilly. But if you're really keen to, you've kind of spotted a bit of land that's maybe noticeable, then feel free to send KaiCycle an email, and we've got a whole bunch of really nice people in the council that can help you through that process. But also that process is long, so it's your other ways. Is there land that no one sees and can be used to grow, or could you just use your own backyard as a place of common space as well, which is completely in your domain then as well.
Can I just add something quickly there, just to build on Sheldon? Also, if you've got more than one site in mind, it's not a bad idea to get somebody along to have a look at it, and they might say, well, it doesn't get much sun or whatever, or they might look at the soil. So getting somebody along who knows a little bit about gardening might help you.
I guess the only other thing I'd add, not that I've set up a community garden, is make sure you look around to see what's already there. You might not realise that there's a community garden just down the road, or your neighbour 4 doors down is an amazing gardener. So try and build a network of people and involve people at every step of the process, because like Sheldon said, if you just start gardening, you know, maybe you're just going to be doing it alone, and for it to be sustainable, yeah, build a group.
And there's a list of the known gardens on the council's website, but of course there might be even more around you. You just go take a look.
Great answers there. I think one thing that springs to mind when you were all talking is you're talking about growing community. I guess if I was to just say, right, that's it, I've got some land, I'm going to do this. How do you go about that? Is it kind of like Grant said, do you need to knock on the door? Do you use social media? What are some top tips there?
So when we found the site and two of us started, I just sent out an email to 2 or 3 more who I thought would be interested. And then that email group grew over time to more and more people. It ended up being so big, I think it was something like 120 people on the email, that we had to create a newsletter. So the email chain growing worked for us.
Yeah, I think knocking on the door would work as well, or leaving a note at the place where you think a garden could be started. It's sometimes we assume people don't go to places, but you'll be surprised how many people go to these empty places. They actually find solitude, and so leaving a note there could also create a bit of a list as well.
Right. Okay, this at level 2, who knows, but at level 2, what can we do together? And is there any way we can start anything at level 3? I'm gonna fire that one at you, Saskia.
I guess my main thing would be sharing abundance. If you can, if you've got abundance, share it. It's, I guess, that same thing of gestures. Plant some seedlings, put them outside your door. Maybe if you're not a confident gardener, you know, everyone can, or you don't have a space to garden, like everyone can put seeds in some soil in some pots and share that around. What else can you do? I would say, yeah, use this time as an opportunity if you haven't already connected with your neighbours. You know, this is a really right time when people are probably going to be quite open to connection. Maybe some people are not in the best space, so, you know, be mindful of that. But yeah, I don't know, I guess just focusing on squashing out that idea of scarcity is my biggest thing. So just start sharing and being more visible in your community. Get excited if you can. Look around the neighbourhood, see what berms you can maybe take over or think about. Yeah.
Great. Good advice. Sheldon, you look like you're itching to say something.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with everything Saskia said. I think level 3 is a great time to scheme, I guess, and yeah, I fully agree. Get excited about the opportunity to bring people together, however many that is. If it's 2, amazing. If it's 1,000, slow down. But yeah, I think at level 3, figure out what you have and what you can do, and then what you can't do. So that, because yeah, that gesture idea is a reciprocal one. It's you give a little and you need to take something back as well. So you might realize, well, I've got a front yard and I've got a spade, but I really need a fork. So maybe you already know your neighbors, maybe you don't, but try and figure out how you might get a fork, because there's going to be thousands around Wellington. And yeah, figure out what you need and what you can give, and then share that with others.
Yep, I have. So a couple of things. So I'm not entirely sure of the conditions of level 2 and 3, but I think I'm correct in saying that people have had to delay the settlement dates of their houses because of level 4. And also people have not been able to move flats because of level 4. And now that movement is beginning to happen. So this is a really good time to do something for people coming into your area. So we have this project called New Resident Welcome Kit, which is a shoebox, and inside it is seeds, contacts, maps of the area, and other information that's going to help those new people connect with their neighbours and with the community. So right now is the time to do that, I think. The other thing also to think about is that some people are not coming out of lockdown level 4. So my neighbour, for instance, will be in level 4 for the next 14 months. So there's many people like that who are quite often invisible because they're inside all the time. And maybe we could think about creative ways of actually including them.
Fantastic. I think this is a specific question for you, Sheldon. Can you speak more to what the mutual aid network will look like?
So it's open. It's an open network, so it's open to whatever anyone else brings. But so we're happy to facilitate connection effectively to help build gardens. At the moment, it looks like us offering primarily seedlings, and we've managed to source some organic compost that we can offer really cheaply to the community. But we're open to others starting similar things in their community, and we can be the voice piece for that. So it's about a network. It's not just about KaiCycle and what we can do. It's about, if you have something to give, you might have a shed of tools, then you can let us know and we can help to connect people together. So yeah, if you've got ideas, you can help to shape that network.
Right. I think one of the other things we haven't talked about is Fruit Tree Guardians, which has seen a lot of trees being planted over many years. I think we're up to 900 fruit trees across the Wellington region at this point. And there's a lot of information about that on Sustainability Trust website and on the council website, where you can actually search for those trees. And we're always looking for new fruit tree guardians, because sometimes people will move away, or, you know, can't look after a tree anymore, and so those trees still need someone to look after them. So that's a great way to get involved if you can't do anything else. So yeah, I guess we've got about 6 minutes left, so maybe I could just get a few top tips from each of you about community or growing as a community, or where to start. And I'll throw that at you first, Grant.
Okay. Well, I mentioned the Goodwill Bank. I think that's a really important thing to think about, to build this bank, build it and fill it full of goodwill. It's going to help you in the hard times. But also, maybe I'll tell you something which is nice and kind of funny. If you ever want an indication of are your approaches working, is community building, because quite often it's hard to tell. I had an example of that a few years ago where I was talking to a person in another street who said that they were having difficulty cutting long grass and they didn't have the right tools. And I said, well, I've got a really sharp slasher I can lend you. So I did. And 6 months later, I completely forgotten about that slasher. But then I noticed, to my horror, his neighbor walking down the street with my slasher. And I thought, yes, it's working. That's me.
It's an awesome story. All right, Sheldon.
I think I've said this with every single one, but start small, I guess, and within your grasp, like Saskia said, you could start a million tiny things, but if it's a good seed that's looked after, they'll get really big. Crop swap started with one person, but now it's quite big. And in the particular case of looking at gardens as a way of bringing us together, just sow seeds. We did that 5 years ago, and a community grew around it. So just put the seeds in the ground. Yeah.
Love it. Grow plants, grow community. Saskia, any last minute top tips from you?
I feel a little bit stumped, but I did realise I forgot to mention that if anyone wants to start up a crop swap in their community, because there's one in Newtown and I think one in Petone, let us know, because we'll support you to do that. The more places, the closer the crop swap to the people's home, the better, They're actually better when they're small and not hectic, 60 people, lots of things. I guess just dream. If you're in a headspace where you can start pondering about what you can do, I think that thing of just getting excited about doing something small and enjoying it, getting pleasure out of it.
Fantastic. One thing we've done, we noticed that our next door neighbour has a very abundant apple tree at the moment. And so at level 3, we have gone and started to pick those apples and put them out in bags and just leave them at the top of our property so that people could take that. But yeah, it's those simple things, isn't it? It's like, that's just one small thing that we can do, and who knows what that might lead to. But it's, it's taken COVID-19 for us to actually stop and think about it. So small blessings at this time.
Quickly add, another thing I forgot to say is I've never really been rejected when I go and knock on someone's door and say, hey, I noticed you have lots of lemons. Would you mind if I took some? I can drop you back some preserved lemons. I don't think I've been rejected, so just give it a go.
Yeah, the worst thing people can say is no, sorry. You'll be like, okay, no worries. Lovely to meet you, bye-bye. It's good. And it's a great way to get to know your neighbours in a different way. So I guess amazing information there shared by all 3 of our panellists at a time when it's never been more important to think about how we can become not self-sufficient, but self-sufficient as a community, and how to connect with our community to become more resilient together. So amazing stuff. Really important to be able to grow our own kai locally and deal with our own food waste and turn it into something that can be useful. So as I mentioned, there's a recording of this. It'll be available at Sustainability Trust and on the Facebook page. along with a blog and relevant links. There is another webinar. This is the last in the gardening series, but there is another one next Tuesday if anyone's interested in learning about how to keep your house warm in winter. Yeah, there was one this week and it was fantastic. So I strongly recommend going and listening to that one. But I'd just like to finish with a quote from Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So just want to say thank you to Grant, Sheldon and Saskia for your time today and for your amazing advice and stories, and thank you to everyone that joined us. Ka kite.
Ka kite.